We talk about our own security situation, and then there's Taiwan's. Fascinating to see. I guess there's always an element of concern for Taiwan and such a real threat. So the entire country being tested as to their war readiness, it sort of puts things into perspective, doesn't it? How much or how well do you think Taiwan can prepare for a possible invasion?
I was in Taiwan a couple of weeks ago, and I can tell you it's going to be an incredibly difficult country to attack. It's big, it has difficult coasts and shorelines. It has a population of 23 million people who do not want to be taken over by the Chinese Communist Party. So they will fight, I believe, much as the Ukrainians have fought, Tom. They're not going to sort of roll over and say this is acceptable. What's been interesting is that up until recently, Taiwan has probably left too much of its defence in the hands of the United States. But now we see significant spending increasing. The Taiwanese have a sophisticated defence industry base. They're building their own missiles, for example. They've got an election in December, which is, I think, going to shape the politics towards the mainland of China for the next 5 years. So it's a crucial moment. And Taiwanese people realise they're kind of at the centre of global attention right now.
Mm. So the two aspects are always, as we've sort of seen playing out in Ukraine, who's got more of the might? Well, that's an obvious answer, and no one's suggesting that Taiwan could, I don't think, actually hold off full throttle an invasion without assistance. But also, what does mission accomplished look like? Because if the people are unwilling in any way to be subjugated, then you're testing one will against another. And how long do you be determined to sort of plant that flag if the Taiwanese people are like, no, we're never going to accede to that, and you could have years of whatever it might look like?
Yes, most of the scenarios that people are using to think about Taiwan these days imagine a short attack but a long conflict as pushback happens from the democracies and from the Taiwanese themselves. That's why I say it's a difficult country to attack. You recall, the propaganda on Russia was that the Russian troops would be in Kiev in 3 days. I don't think that mistake will be made by the Chinese. They understand that this is a hard nut to crack. And really our job, the job of the democracies, is to make sure that we make this as hard for China as possible so they decide not to do it. That would be the best outcome.
Yeah, as hard on the aspect of the invasion aspect. I guess the interesting thing on the flip side, it's quite a prosperous country, Taiwan. Would it be difficult for all the residents to accept years of, guerrilla warfare, essentially, attacks back on the Chinese Communist Party, or if they're offered an olive branch of let us be benevolent dictators sort of thing? Maybe is that the path the Chinese Communist Party hope they can take? They go, look, you've got a pretty good life. Do you really want to give that all up for freedom?
I think the experience of seeing Hong Kong being taken over by the Chinese communists has sort of steeled the views of most Taiwanese that they don't want this. If you walk around Taipei, you can see there are bomb shelters that are prepared under buildings. There's full conscription being brought back into the country from January next year. They want their independence in the sense of being their own political country. They don't necessarily want to formalise that independence in order to antagonise the Chinese, but they don't want to be run from Beijing. And I think that would lead to stiff resistance, maybe not from the whole of the Taiwanese population, but from a very large part of it.
Peter Jennings, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Tom.